Hi, I'm pleased to welcome you in this video where we're going to discuss the issues linked with the growing of the world population and the shortage of food by trying to answer this question: will there be enough food for everyone in 2050? Let's have a look at the table of contents first. Here we see that we're going to start by looking at the world population situation and the global access to food nowadays, and then we'll try to understand why is there still a lot of people without enough to eat. Although there are many reasons for the global access to food issues, including economics and geopolitics matters, we're going to look at what we, common citizens, can do. Afterwards, we will study our current food production system and see their limits. And finally, we'll see the innovations that are developed to enhance the world food production and help us be able to feed the world population in 2050. Let's start. Recently, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations published a concise report of the world population situation in 2014. In this report, we learned that the world's population reached 7.2 billion last year and that this number is expected to increase by more than 2 billion within 35 years. Well, that means that by 2050 we will be 9 billion humans living on Earth. The first and the most obvious challenge that this new amount of people implies is the access to food. Although in 1996 the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization estimated that the world was producing enough food to provide every human with 2,700 calories a day, there are still a lot of people suffering from hunger today. As the World Food Programme of the United Nations reminds us, there are 805 million people around the world suffering from hunger. And hunger still kills more nowadays than AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis combined. But if in theory we are producing enough food to feed everyone, why is there still so much people suffering from hunger? As I said in my introduction, let aside the economics and geopolitics matters, we're going to look at what we common people can do. And for us, the answer might just lie within our consumption mode and the tremendous amount of food that we're wasting every day. Roberto A. Ferdman, journalist for the Washington Post, wrote on the September 2014 that according to Natural Resource Defense Council, Americans threw out 35 million tons of food last year, and roughly a third of the food produced worldwide never gets eaten at all. Instead, this food is wasted. As we can see, we sometimes even waste more than we consume. And all this waste is created by consumers, restaurants, and grocery stores. So maybe if we change the way we consume, we could save a lot of food that would be helpful to feed those who suffer from undernourishment and those most that are to come by 2050. Indeed, the American Natural Resource Defense Council estimated that a reduction of 15% of the food wasted in America could feed 25 million people, and this organization gives us a few tips to follow if we want to waste less. We can shop more wisely and plan the menu of our lunch. We should buy more funny fruits and not only those that have the perfect colors and shapes. We should learn better about products used by dates, as we can consume the products after these dates. We should use more our freezer and freeze our leftovers and the food that we are not going to eat quickly. We can also request for smaller portions in restaurants and bringing back home our leftovers. But changing our consumption mode and wasting less food won't be enough to cope with the increase in the demand for food that those 2 billion more people will bring. If we change the way we consume, we also have to change the way we produce. And that brings us to our next point, the limits of our current food production systems. Dr. Fred Davis, senior science advisor for the U.S. Agency for International Development's Bureau of Food Security and member of the Texas A&M AgriLife Research, declared that the world will have to increase its production of food by 70% if we want to meet the demand of 9 billion people. He also adds that the increase currently projected for crop production from biotechnology, genetics, agronomics and horticulture will not be sufficient to meet food demand. According to him, the world is maybe less than 40 years away from a food shortage. The Division for Sustainable Development of the United Nations said in its publication titled Food and Agriculture, The Future of Sustainability, published in 2012, that for the first time, at a global level, food production faces multiple limiting factors for key resources such as land, water, energy and inputs. But facing challenge can also stimulate innovation, they say, and the United Nations came with 9 key areas of consensus as the key path of action. Amongst them, we found ideas like organizing small and medium farmers, focusing more on human nutrition rather than more production and help people to eat right, integrating an ecological view to farming, impelling innovation and availability of technologies, and significantly reduce the waste along the food chain. And just as it needed to call for it, innovation responded. The Guardian published in January 2012 an article written by John Vidal titled The Future of Food, where the journalist presents some creative innovation to produce food. From algae farms to edible insects, we're going to look at those innovations that could help us feeding everyone in 2050. We could free up a large amount of farmland to grow more food by developing algae farms underwater to produce oil, for example. According to scientists, algae can produce up to 10,000 gallons of oil per acre, whereas our current crops producing biofuel only produce 350 gallons per acre. Algae can also be used to feed animals and work as a fertilizer. Artificial meat is produced in laboratories where cultured meat is grown from stem cells in giant vats. This artificial meat could help us reduce our livestock, and we know how important it is when 70% of the cereals and grains grown in the United States are destined not to feed humans but cattle. Another idea is the super rice developed by Mr. Lee Jae-kang and his team. This is a series of rice varieties which produce more grain, have proved more resistant to drought, foods, salty waters, insects and disease. And all that have been achieved without genetical modification technologies. The restorative agriculture. That consists in technologies that allows us to grow food in unlikely places and to green up the arid regions of Earth. One of these restorative agriculture projects is the seawater greenhouses that you can see on the screen, invented by the British Charlie Patton. Those greenhouses recreate the natural water cycle in places very arid like deserts using seawater. And as the greenhouses produce a lot more fresh water than is needed to feed the plants, the water excess can be released into local environments. After the good results of those seawater greenhouses, more projects are built, like the Sahara Forest project that will be built in Jordan at a larger scale. We also find that we can now eat insects. In fact, at least 1,800 species are already eaten across Africa, Latin America, and Asia. And The Guardian published an entire article dedicated to edible insects when we learn that we may very soon have some insects at our lunch menu too. Not only insects are rich in protein, calcium and iron, and low in fat and cholesterol, but it also needs very little space to grow them, and they could also help to reduce the livestock that is producing 20% of all the greenhouse gases driving global warming according to the FAO. Insects are a new source of protein and a richer one than our commercial meat. In conclusion, the arrival of 2 billion more people on Earth will bring a real challenge in terms of food, and we have to react now in a coordinated action if we want to be able to feed everyone. Consumers will have to change the way they buy and consume food in order to waste less and be more wise. Producers also will have to find new ways to produce food, to produce new food, and to produce it differently without depleting our resources. If we want 9 billion people to be able to eat in 2050, we have to act now and we have to act together. Thank you for watching. It was Jean-Baptiste, student at Mariap's Free Institute, learning English and Chinese.